The observation deck of the Galactic Council Station was a massive room made of glass and metal. It floated in the darkness of space, far from any star or planet. Through the windows, 1,000 distant suns burned like tiny dots of light. It was beautiful. It was also very cold. Commander Elias Vance sat alone in the corner of this great room. He held a cup of coffee in his hands. The coffee had gone cold hours ago, but he did not care. He was watching. He was always watching. Around him, aliens of every shape and size moved through the room. Some had scales, some had feathers, some had bodies made of crystal that caught the light and threw rainbows across the floor. They talked and laughed and made deals that would affect billions of lives. None of them looked at Elias. None of them cared that he was there. Humanity had only been part of the Galactic Council for 11 years. In a galaxy where some species counted their histories in hundreds of thousands of years, 11 years was nothing. It was less than nothing. It was the blink of an eye. Elias understood this. He did not take it personally. He simply sat and watched and learned. He was 63 years old, though he looked younger. The medical technology of Earth had advanced far beyond what the galaxy knew. His hair was gray at the temples, and his eyes were the color of storm clouds. He had a face that was easy to forget. This was useful. People who were easy to forget could learn many secrets. A group of Vethrani diplomats walked past his table. They were tall beings with bodies covered in hard crystal plates that looked like armor. Their eyes were made of many small parts, like the eyes of insects, and they glittered in the light. They were talking about trade routes and military positions. They did not lower their voices. Why would they? The human in the corner was not important enough to worry about. Elias listened to every word. He remembered every word. This was what he did. The Vethrani Dominion was the most powerful empire in this part of the galaxy. They had conquered dozens of species over thousands of years. Their fleets were vast. Their warriors were feared. When they spoke, other species listened. When they demanded, other species obeyed. Today was an important day. The High Sovereign of the Vethrani Dominion, a being called Kethalor, was going to address the council. Everyone knew what he was going to say. He was going to announce that the Dominion was taking control of the Outer Rim territories. These were areas of space that the council had declared neutral. Areas where species could live free from the control of the great empires. Areas where 3 human colony worlds existed. Elias finished his cold coffee and stood up. He walked slowly toward the main chamber where the council met. Other aliens moved out of his way, not because they respected him, but because they did not want to touch him. Humans were strange to them, soft, weak. Their bodies had no armor, no claws, no natural weapons. How had such a species ever survived? The main chamber was a great circular room with seats arranged in rising rows like a stadium. Each species had its own section. The human section was small and placed near the back. Elias took his seat and waited. The arbitrator, a being made of pure energy that served as the neutral leader of council meetings, floated to the center of the room. Its voice was like music and thunder mixed together. The council will now hear from High Sovereign Kethalor of the Vethrani Dominion. Kethalor rose from his seat. He was larger than the other Vethrani, his crystal plates darker and thicker. He had been High Sovereign for 200 years. He had overseen the conquest of 6 species. He was not afraid of anything in this galaxy. Fellow members of the Galactic Council, he said, his voice clicking and buzzing in the way of his people. The translation devices made his words clear to all. I come before you today to announce a new era of order and stability. He waved one of his forearms, and a holographic map appeared in the center of the room. It showed the Outer Rim territories, a vast stretch of space at the edge of explored territory. For too long, these regions have existed in chaos. Pirates raid shipping lanes. Criminal organizations grow powerful. Primitive species fight endless wars over worthless rocks. Kethalor's compound eyes scanned the room. The Dominion will bring order to this chaos. We will reorganize these territories under our protection. Protection. Elias almost smiled at the word. He had seen what Vethrani protection looked like. He had read the reports from the Hollow Worlds, where an entire species now lived as slaves. He had studied the history of the Kethmari uprising, which had ended with the Dominion glassing 3 planets from orbit. Several delegates from smaller species shifted in their seats. They were uncomfortable. They knew what this meant, but none of them would speak against the Dominion. None of them were brave enough or foolish enough. Elias raised his hand. The arbitrator noticed the movement. The representative from Earth wishes to speak. A ripple of surprise moved through the chamber. The human wanted to speak? At a moment like this, Kethaler's compound eyes turned toward Elias. There were thousands of tiny lenses in those eyes, and none of them showed respect. They showed amusement. They showed contempt. "Let the child species observe," Kethaler said. His mandibles clicked in. What Elias had learned was Vethrani laughter. "They have nothing of consequence to offer. Their fleet numbers what? 40 vessels? Perhaps they wish to offer those 40 ships to assist in our reorganization." More laughter filled the chamber. The Krithali delegation, longtime allies of the Dominion, made hooting sounds of amusement. Even some of the neutral species smiled or made gestures that meant the same thing. Elias lowered his hand slowly. "No." Kethaler spread his forearms wide. "The human has nothing to say after all. How typical of their species. They have been part of this council for 11 years. And in that time, they have done nothing, built nothing, conquered nothing. They sit in their little corner of space with their 40 ships and their soft bodies, and they think they belong among the stars." The High Sovereign turned back to the full council. "Let this be a reminder to all. The galaxy belongs to the strong. The weak either serve or they disappear. This is the natural law. This is the way it has always been." The session continued for another 2 hours. Territory was divided. Agreements were made. The 3 human colony worlds in the Outer Rim were mentioned only briefly. They would be given a choice: accept Dominion oversight or face consequences. Elias said nothing during any of this. He sat in his seat and watched. He listened to every word. He noted which species supported the Dominion and which opposed them in secret. He watched the body language of the delegates, learning their fears and their ambitions. When the session ended, he walked back to his quarters on the station. It was a small room with a narrow bed and a desk with a computer terminal. There were no decorations on the walls. Elias did not need decorations. He needed only a secure communication channel. He sat at the desk and entered a series of codes. The screen flickered, then showed a symbol that very few people in the galaxy had ever seen. It was the emblem of Earth's Strategic Contingency Division, a branch of human government so secret that even most human leaders did not know it existed. Elias had served in this division for 40 years. He had been recruited as a young man, back when humanity was first discovering that they were not alone in the universe. Back when the first signals from alien civilizations reached Earth and everything changed. Those had been frightening days. Humanity learned that the galaxy was full of life, but that most of that life was dangerous. Empires rose and fell among the stars. Species were conquered, enslaved, or destroyed. The strong took what they wanted. The weak suffered. Earth's leaders had faced a choice. They could announce themselves to the galaxy and hope for the best. They could hide and pray they were never discovered. Or they could prepare. They chose to prepare. For 60 years, while the public face of humanity smiled and made friends and joined the Galactic Council, the Strategic Contingency Division worked in the shadows. They studied alien technology and improved upon it. They built ships and weapons in hidden facilities throughout the solar system and beyond. They placed agents in every major government and organization in the galaxy. They watched, they learned, they waited, and they hoped they would never need to use what they had built. Elias typed a message. It was short. It was the message he had hoped he would never have to send. Prometheus Protocol. Authorization. Vance Omega 7. They've chosen. He pressed the send button and sat back in his chair. For a long moment, he stared at the screen. Then he closed his eyes and let out a slow breath. 40 years of work. 60 years of preparation. All of it leading to this moment. The galaxy thought humanity was weak. They thought humans were soft, primitive, unimportant. They looked at the 40 ships in Earth's public fleet and laughed. They looked at the small human colonies and saw nothing worth respecting. They had no idea what waited in the dark. Elias thought about New Cascadia, one of the 3 human colonies in the Outer Rim. He had visited it once, years ago. It was a beautiful world with blue oceans and green forests. 2 million people lived there. Families, children, people who had traveled light years from Earth to build new lives among the stars. The Dominion would come for them soon. That was certain now. Kethaler had made his intentions clear. The outer rim would be reorganized, and any species that resisted would face the consequences. But what Cathalar did not know, what no one in the galaxy knew except for a small group of humans, was that New Cascadia was not undefended. None of the human colonies were undefended. Earth itself was not undefended. The 40 ships everyone knew about were just the surface. They were the part of the iceberg that floated above the water. Below the surface, hidden in the darkness of space, in facilities carved into asteroids and moons, in dimensions that most species did not even know existed, humanity had built something else entirely. They had built a force that could make empires tremble. Elias opened his eyes and looked at the screen again. A response had arrived. It was even shorter than his message. Prometheus authorized. God help us all. He read those words and felt a weight settle on his shoulders. God help us all, indeed. Because what was coming would change the galaxy forever. The Vethrani Dominion had chosen to threaten humanity. They had chosen to see human silence as weakness. They had chosen to mistake patience for fear. They were about to learn how wrong they were. Elias stood and walked to the window of his small room. Outside, the stars burned in the endless darkness. Somewhere out there, on a planet called Earth, preparations were already beginning. Ships that had waited in the shadows for decades were powering up their engines. Weapons that had never been used were being activated. Soldiers who had trained their entire lives for a war they hoped would never come were receiving their orders. The quiet human in the corner of the council chamber had been ignored, dismissed, laughed at. That was fine. Elias did not need their respect. He did not need their attention. He only needed them to make their move first. And they had. He thought about Cathalar's words. The weak either serve or they disappear. The High Sovereign believed this was the natural law. He believed strength was measured in ships and weapons and the willingness to use violence. He was half right. Strength was measured in those things. But true strength was not about showing everyone how powerful you were. True strength was about patience. It was about watching and learning and waiting for the right moment. It was about letting your enemies underestimate you until it was too late. Humanity had learned this lesson long ago, back when they were still fighting among themselves on a small blue planet. The loudest warrior was not always the most dangerous one. Sometimes the most dangerous warrior was the one who said nothing at all. The one who sat in the corner and watched. The one everyone forgot was there. Until suddenly, they remembered. Elias allowed himself a small smile. It was not a happy smile. It was the smile of a man who knew that terrible things were coming. War was coming. Death was coming. The galaxy would soon see what humanity had kept hidden for 60 years, and nothing would ever be the same again. He turned away from the window and began to prepare. There were messages to send, plans to review, allies to contact. The Prometheus protocol was in motion now. There was no stopping it. In the observation deck of the Galactic Council Station, alien diplomats continued to make deals and laugh and ignore the empty chair where a human had once sat. They talked about the future and all the great things the Dominion would accomplish in the Outer Rim. None of them knew that their future had just changed. None of them knew that the quiet human they had ignored was about to teach them a lesson they would never forget. The stars burned on in the darkness, keeping their secrets. And somewhere in the vast emptiness of space, humanity began to move, not with noise and threats and displays of power, but quietly, carefully, like a shadow spreading across the light. The Vethrani Dominion had 400 ships ready to conquer the Outer Rim. They thought this made them unstoppable. They were wrong. And soon, very soon, they would understand just how wrong they had been. 3 months passed after the council meeting. 3 months of preparation and waiting and watching. On the human colony of New Cascadia, life continued as normal. Children went to school. Farmers tended their crops. Fishermen sailed the blue oceans that covered most of the planet. 2 million people lived their lives without knowing that a storm was coming. Governor Sarah Chen knew. She had received the classified briefing from Earth 2 months ago. She had read the reports and studied the plans and spent many sleepless nights staring at the ceiling of her bedroom. She was 54 years old and had been governor for 8 years. She had dealt with droughts, economic problems, and disputes between colonies. She had never dealt with an alien invasion, but she would deal with this one. The morning the Vethrani arrived, Sarah was in her office reviewing agricultural reports. Her assistant rushed in with a pale face and trembling hands. "Governor, we have contacts on the edge of the system. Many contacts." Sarah stood slowly. Her heart was beating fast, but her face showed nothing. Leaders could not show fear. Not now. Not ever. How many? 400 ships. Maybe more. They are broadcasting on all frequencies. Sarah nodded. She had expected this. The intelligence reports had predicted that Dominion would send a large force. They wanted to make an example of humanity. They wanted to show the galaxy what happened to species that did not bow. She walked to the command center beneath her office. It was a large room filled with screens and computers and military officers who had been waiting for this day. Some of them looked scared. Most of them looked determined. "Put the broadcast on the main screen," Sarah ordered. The screen flickered, and then a Vethrani face appeared. It was High Commander Ithral, the leader of the Dominion's 3rd Expeditionary Fleet. His crystal plates were polished until they shone. His compound eyes reflected the lights of his bridge. "Humans of this world," Ithral said. His voice was filled with contempt. "Your protectors have abandoned you. Your species lacks the strength to resist the Dominion. We have 400 warships in this system. You have 6 patrol boats." He paused to let this information sink in. "Surrender your infrastructure and your resources. Accept Dominion oversight. Do this, and we shall be merciful. Your people will be allowed to continue their lives under our guidance. Resist, and you will face the consequences." Ithral leaned forward, his mandibles clicking. "You have 1 hour to make your choice. Use this time wisely." The screen went dark. In the command center, no one spoke. The officers looked at their governor, waiting for her response. Sarah Chen took a deep breath and walked to the communication console. "Open a channel to the Vethrani fleet," she said. The technician looked surprised but obeyed. After a moment, he nodded. "Channel open." "Governor?" Sarah spoke clearly and calmly. Her voice did not shake. Her words did not hurry. "High Commander Tral, this is Governor Sarah Chen of New Cascadia. I am required by law to inform you that by entering this system with hostile intent, you have activated Terran Defense Protocol 7. She paused, making sure every word was heard. "You have 1 hour to withdraw your fleet from this system. If you do not withdraw, defensive measures will be taken. This is not a negotiation. This is not a request. This is a warning." She cut the channel before Ithral could respond. In the command center, one of the younger officers looked confused. "Governor, we don't have Defense Protocol 7. We don't have any defense protocols. We have 6 patrol ships and a planetary shield that hasn't been tested in 3 years. Sarah turned to him and smiled. It was a strange smile, neither happy nor sad. It was the smile of someone who knew a secret. "We have exactly what Earth sent us, Lieutenant. Now, I suggest everyone take their positions. The next hour is going to be very interesting." Aboard the Vethrani flagship Eternal Dominance, High Commander Ithral was laughing. His officers laughed with him. The communication from the human governor was playing on repeat, so everyone could enjoy it. "Defense Protocol 7. Ithral clicked his mandibles in amusement. "She threatens us with protocols. With words. She has 6 ships. And she gives us warnings." His second-in-command, a veteran warrior named Keth Ross, stepped forward. "Perhaps we should be cautious, High Commander. We know little about human military capabilities. We know everything we need to know," Ithral said dismissively. "They have 40 ships in their entire fleet. They have no experience with real warfare. They have been part of galactic civilization for only 60 years. What could they possibly have that would threaten us?" Keth Ross wanted to argue, but he held his tongue. High Commander Ithral was not known for accepting disagreement. The hour passed slowly. The Vethrani fleet maintained its position at the edge of the system. 400 warships hung in the darkness like a swarm of metal predators, their weapons armed and ready. On New Cascadia, the civilians had been told to stay indoors. The streets were empty. The skies were quiet. 2 million people waited and prayed and wondered if they would survive the day. Governor Chen watched the clock on the wall of the command center. 59 minutes. 59 minutes and 30 seconds. 59 minutes and 45 seconds. "Governor," the sensor officer said, his voice tight with fear. "The Vethrani fleet is moving. They are advancing toward the planet." Sarah nodded. She had expected this. Ithral would not retreat. His pride would not allow it. "How long until they reach weapons range?" "Approximately 30 minutes at current speed." Sarah closed her eyes for a moment. When she opened them, they were hard and cold. "Activate protocol 7, she said. The officers exchanged confused looks. One of them spoke up. "Governor, there is no protocol 7 in our systems. We don't—" He stopped talking because something was happening on the main screen. Something that should not have been possible. In the empty space between the Vethrani fleet and New Cascadia, reality was tearing itself apart. High Commander Uthral saw it happen from his bridge. One moment, his sensors showed empty space. The next moment, that space was filled with light and energy in impossible shapes. His officers shouted in confusion. Alarms screamed throughout the ship. "What is happening?" Uthral demanded. "Unknown contacts, High Commander. They are appearing from nowhere. Our sensors cannot identify them." The first Vethrani ship to die was a cruiser called the Pride of Conquest. It was 100 meters long and carried a crew of 300 warriors. It had served the Dominion for 80 years. It vanished in less than a second. One moment it was there. The next moment, a hole opened in the fabric of space itself and swallowed the ship whole. There was no explosion, no debris. The Pride of Conquest simply stopped existing. "Mines!" Someone on the Vethrani bridge screamed. "They have mines hidden in folded space." But these were not ordinary mines. No civilization in the galaxy had technology that could hide weapons in folded space. It was supposed to be impossible. The physics did not allow it. And yet, more holes were opening. More ships were vanishing. Uthral watched his fleet begin to die. 3 ships, then 10, then 20. The mines were everywhere, hidden in dimensions that Vethrani's sensors could not detect. Every time a ship tried to move, it triggered another mine. Every attempt to retreat opened another hole in reality. "All ships, hold position," Uthral ordered. "Do not move. Launch fighter screens too." He never finished the sentence. The Acheron arrived. It came through a tear in space that burned with colors no Vethrani had ever seen. It was a ship, but it was unlike any ship in any database in the galaxy. It was black, so black that it seemed to absorb the light around it. Its hull was angular and wrong, covered in shapes that hurt the eyes to look at. It was 3 kilometers long, but it moved with the speed and grace of a fighter. And it was alone. "One ship?" Kethros whispered. "They send 1 ship against 400? The Acheron did not respond to hails. It did not slow down. It did not hesitate. It simply began to kill. The first shot was a beam of white light that cut through a Vethrani battleship like a knife through water. The ship's shields did not even flicker. They simply stopped existing. The battleship broke into 2 pieces, then exploded as its reactor lost containment. The second shot hit a carrier. The third shot hit 3 destroyers in a line. The fourth shot turned an entire squadron into expanding clouds of gas. Uthral watched in frozen horror as his fleet was destroyed. The human ship moved through his formation like death itself, firing weapons that should not exist, using technology that broke every law of physics he knew. Its shields stopped Vethrani weapons as if they were nothing. Its armor ignored direct hits from the most powerful cannons in the fleet. "All ships, concentrate fire on the human vessel," Uthral screamed. "Everything we have." Now, 200 ships turned their weapons on the Acheron. 200 ships fired at once, pouring enough destructive energy to crack a planet's crust. The Acheron flew through the fire without slowing. Its shields flickered once, then stabilized. The ship rolled smoothly and continued killing. On New Cascadia, Governor Chen watched the battle on her main screen. Her officers were silent. Some of them were crying, not from fear, but from relief, from hope they had not dared to feel. "My God," whispered one of them. "Where did that ship come from?" Sarah shook her head. She did not know. She had not been told everything. She only knew that Earth had promised to protect them, and Earth had kept its promise. The battle lasted 4 hours. It was not really a battle. It was an execution. The Vethrani tried everything. They tried to concentrate their fire. They tried to surround the human ship. They tried to ram it with sacrificial cruisers. They tried to retreat. Nothing worked. The mines killed any ship that tried to run. The Acheron killed any ship that stayed to fight. Autonomous weapons platforms appeared from hidden positions throughout the system, small and fast and deadly. They hunted down fighters and escape pods and anything else that tried to flee. By the end of the 4th hour, The pride of the Vethrani 3rd Expeditionary Fleet was nothing but scattered debris and cooling metal. 400 ships, over 100,000 warriors, gone. High Commander Weithral was among the last to die. His flagship, the Eternal Dominance, had survived longer than most. Its shields were the strongest in the fleet. Its armor was the thickest. It had been built to withstand anything, but it could not withstand the Acheron. In his final moments, Weithral managed to send a message to the Dominion homeworld. His voice was broken with fear and confusion. His compound eyes reflected the flames that were consuming his bridge. This is High Commander Weithral of the 3rd Expeditionary Fleet. We have been destroyed. The humans, they have technology we have never seen. Weapons that ignore our shields. Ships that appear from nothing. We never had a chance. He coughed as smoke filled his lungs. Warn the High Sovereign. Warn everyone. The humans are not what we thought. They are not weak. They are not primitive. They are. He looked up at the screen and saw the Acheron turning toward him. Its weapons were glowing with that terrible white light. What are they? What are they? The transmission ended in static. The silence that followed was absolute. On New Cascadia, Governor Chen finally allowed herself to breathe. The sky above her world was clear. The threat was gone. 2 million people would sleep safely tonight. She looked at the screen, where the Acheron hung motionless among the debris of the Vethrani fleet. She did not know who crewed that ship or where it had come from. She did not know what other secrets humanity had kept hidden in the darkness between stars. But she knew one thing with perfect certainty. The galaxy would never look at humanity the same way again. In the following days, news of the battle spread across the stars. The Galactic Council called emergency sessions. The Vethrani Dominion raged and threatened and demanded explanations. Other species watched with fear and fascination. How had the humans done it? Where had that technology come from? What else were they hiding? On Earth, in a secure facility deep beneath the mountains, a group of officers watched the reports come in. They did not celebrate. They did not cheer. They knew that this was just the beginning. One of them turned to a screen that showed Elias Vance's face, transmitted from the council station. "The galaxy is waking up," the officer said. "They are asking questions we cannot answer." Elias nodded slowly. "Let them ask. Let them wonder. Let them fear." He looked at the reports of the Vethrani fleet's destruction. 400 ships, gone in hours. It was a message, a warning, a demonstration of what humanity could do when pushed. "The Dominion will not accept this," the officer continued. "They will come again, with more ships, more weapons, more anger." "I know," Elias said. "I am counting on it." The officer frowned. "You want them to attack again?" Elias did not smile, but something cold moved behind his eyes. The Vethrani have spent thousands of years building their empire on fear. They have taught the galaxy that strength means cruelty, that power means dominance, that the only choice is to conquer or be conquered. He paused, letting his words sink in. "We are going to teach them a different lesson. We are going to show them, and everyone else, that there is another kind of strength, the kind that watches and waits, the kind that builds in secret, the kind that strikes only when necessary, but strikes so hard that no one ever forgets." He looked out a window at the stars. "The Vethrani will come again, and when they do, we will be ready, not just to defend ourselves, but to end this, to show the galaxy that humanity will not be conquered, will not be enslaved, will not be threatened." His voice dropped to almost a whisper. "They ignored us for 60 years. They laughed at us in the council chamber. They thought our silence meant weakness." He turned back to the screen, and now there was fire in his eyes. "They are about to learn that our silence meant we were preparing. And now, that preparation is complete." The message ended. The screen went dark, and across the galaxy, in council chambers and military bases and royal palaces, species that had never thought twice about humanity began to worry, because the quiet ones, they were learning, were sometimes the most dangerous of all. The Galactic Council chamber had never been so full. Representatives from every major species in the known galaxy had come. Some had traveled for weeks through hyperspace to be here. Some had sent their highest leaders, not just diplomats. This was the most important meeting in generations. Everyone wanted to know the same thing. What were the humans hiding? Elias Vance walked into the chamber alone. He wore the same simple gray uniform he always wore. His face showed the same calm expression it always showed. If he was nervous or afraid, nothing in his appearance revealed it. But this time, every eye in the room turned to watch him. He felt their stares like heat on his skin. The Krethali delegation, those tall beings with scales like emeralds, tracked his movements with predator eyes. The Melthori, floating spheres of living light, pulsed with anxious colors. The Vorn collective, sharing thoughts through their hive mind, buzzed with a frequency that meant intense focus. And the Vethrani, High Sovereign Cathalor, had come in person. This was almost unheard of. The High Sovereign rarely left the homeworld. He ruled through messages and commands, not personal appearances. But 400 ships had been destroyed. An entire expeditionary fleet, gone in hours. This demanded a personal response. Cathalor's crystal plates had been darkened with ceremonial war paint. His compound eyes burned with a fury that had been building for weeks. When he looked at Elias, there was murder in that gaze. Elias met those eyes and did not look away. The arbitrator floated to the center of the chamber. Its energy form flickered with stress. This emergency session of the Galactic Council will now come to order. The matter before us is the recent military engagement in the new Cascadia system, and the questions it has raised regarding human military capabilities. It turned to face the Vethrani delegation. High Sovereign Cathalor, you requested this session. You may speak first. Cathalor rose, his forearms spread wide in a gesture of controlled rage. 400 ships, he said. His voice echoed through the chamber. The 3rd Expeditionary Fleet. 100,000 warriors. Our finest commanders. Our most advanced vessels. He pointed one arm at Elias. Destroyed by the humans. By a species we were told had 40 ships. By a species that has been part of this council for barely a decade. By a species that sat in the back of this chamber and said nothing while greater powers shaped the galaxy. He took a step forward. Other Vethrani moved with him. We demand answers. What weapons did the humans use? Where did this technology come from? How long have they been lying to this council about their true capabilities? He turned to address the full assembly. And more importantly, what else are they hiding? If they concealed this fleet, this technology, what other secrets do they keep? Are they a threat to all of us? Have we allowed a viper into our midst? Murmurs filled the chamber. Many species were nodding. The Krethali ambassador hissed agreement. Even species that had no love for the Dominion looked worried. The arbitrator turned to Elias. Commander Vance, you may respond on behalf of humanity. Elias stood. He did not hurry. He did not seem rushed or nervous. He simply rose to his feet and walked to the center of the chamber, where all could see him clearly. For a long moment, he said nothing. He let the silence stretch. He let the tension build. Then he spoke. You want to know what we are. His voice was quiet, but it carried to every corner of the room. There was something in that voice that made people listen. Something calm and cold and absolutely certain. For 60 years, humanity has been part of this galaxy. For 60 years, we have sat in this council and watched. We have listened to speeches and attended meetings and followed the rules. He looked at Cathalor, and for 60 years, we have watched what this galaxy truly is. He turned slowly, looking at each delegation in turn. We watched the Kethmari uprising. 12 worlds demanded independence from the Dominion. The response was genocide. 80 million beings, dead in a single month. The Melthori pulsed with uncomfortable colors. The Kethmari had been their distant cousins. We watched the conquest of the Hollow Worlds. An entire species, enslaved because they had resources the Dominion wanted. They are still slaves today. Their children are born in chains. Keth Aylor's mandibles clicked with anger. Ancient history. Matters that do not concern. We watched. Elias continued, as if the High Sovereign had not spoken, as species after species was crushed, absorbed, or destroyed. We watched empires measure their worth by how many others they could conquer. We watched the strong take from the weak and call it natural law. He stopped turning and faced the full council, and we asked ourselves a question. What happens when the strong come for us? What happens when someone decides that humanity has something worth taking? Our worlds? Our resources? Our people? He shook his head slowly. We knew the answer. We had seen it happen too many times. The galaxy does not protect the weak. The Council does not defend those who cannot defend themselves. If we wanted to survive, we would have to be able to protect ourselves. He reached into his pocket and pulled out a small device. A holo projector. He placed it on the central platform. So we prepared. The projector activated. A holographic map appeared above it, filling the center of the chamber with light. It was a map of Vithrani space. But this was not an ordinary map. This map showed things that no one outside the Dominion should know. Fleet positions, shipyard locations, defense platform networks, communication arrays, supply depots, every critical military installation in the entire Dominion. Marked in red, Keth Aller stared at the map. His compound eyes widened. His mandibles stopped clicking. For the first time in 200 years, the High Sovereign was speechless. "We have been inside your systems for 30 years, Elias said. "Your computers, your networks, your most secret databases. We know the position of every ship in your fleet. We know the codes for your defense platforms. We know the weaknesses in your shields and the flaws in your weapons." He looked at the High Sovereign with something that might have been pity. "We know the names of your spies in other governments. We know the contents of your private messages. We know about the coup attempt last year and how you dealt with the conspirators." Keth Aller found his voice. "Impossible. Your encryption is excellent," Elias agreed, "for the technology this galaxy uses. But we did not develop technology to match yours. We developed technology that makes yours obsolete." He turned back to the map. "Every marker you see represents information we have gathered over 3 decades. 30 years of watching. 30 years of learning. 30 years of preparing for a day we hoped would never come." He deactivated the map and faced the Council. "You ask what we are hiding. The answer is everything. We have hidden our true fleet. We have hidden our true weapons. We have hidden our true capabilities. We did this not because we wanted to threaten anyone, but because we knew that the moment we revealed our strength, we would become a target." He looked at each delegation in turn. "We showed you 40 ships, because that was all we needed you to see. We spoke quietly in council meetings because we had nothing to gain by speaking loudly. We let you underestimate us because we knew that if you ever saw us as equals, you would never leave us alone." He took a breath. "But the Dominion forced our hand. They threatened our people. They sent 400 ships to conquer a colony of 2 million civilians. They gave us no choice." He turned back to Keth Aller. "And now you demand answers. You demand to know what else we are hiding. You speak of threats and vipers and danger." His voice hardened. "Let me be very clear about something, High Sovereign. Humanity did not build its hidden strength to conquer. We have no interest in empire. We do not want your worlds or your resources or your people. We built our strength so that no one would ever be able to take ours." He stepped closer to the Vithrani delegation. His guards tensed but did not move. "The fleet you sent to New Cascadia is gone. Every ship, every warrior. This is not a tragedy we celebrate. Those were living beings with families and hopes and futures. We take no joy in their deaths." His eyes were cold. "But we will not apologize. We will not explain. And we will not back down. The Dominion chose violence. We responded. If you choose violence again, we will respond again. And the next time, the cost will be much higher." Keth Aller's rage finally boiled over. He rose to his full height, his crystal plates catching the light. "You dare threaten the Dominion? You dare speak to us of costs? We have ruled this galaxy for 10,000 years. We have conquered empires that were old when your species still lived in caves." He swept his arm across the chamber. "We will summon every fleet, every warrior. We will gather a force such as the galaxy has never seen. And we will burn Earth to ash. Your hidden ships, your secret weapons, none of it will save you. The Dominion will crush humanity like the insects you are." The chamber erupted in chaos. Species were shouting at each other. Some were calling for calm. Others were pledging support to the Dominion or demanding neutrality. The arbitrator was trying to restore order, but its voice was lost in the noise. Through it all, Elias stood perfectly still. He waited until the chaos began to fade. He waited until attention returned to him. Then he spoke again, and his voice cut through the remaining noise like a blade. "You still do not understand." The chamber fell silent. Elias looked at Keth Aller with an expression that had no anger in it, no fear, no pride, just a quiet certainty that was more frightening than any threat. We are not threatening you, High Sovereign. We are giving you one chance, one opportunity to step back, to reconsider, to choose a different path. He pulled out another device. This one was not a projector. It was a communicator. 3 hours ago, while you were preparing for this meeting, 500 human ships took up positions throughout Dominion space. They are hidden in folded dimensions, just as the mines were hidden in the new Cascadia system. You cannot see them. You cannot detect them, but they are there. Kethaler's mandibles clicked rapidly. Fear was beginning to mix with the rage in his eyes. They are not there to attack, Elias continued. They are there to demonstrate, to show you that your fleets, your defenses, your mighty empire, they are already compromised. They have been compromised for decades. He put the communicator away. You can summon every fleet. You can gather every warrior. You can build the largest armada in galactic history. And it will not be enough, because we know everything about you, and you know nothing about us. He turned to address the full council one final time. Humanity came to the stars hoping to find wisdom, hoping to find friendship, hoping to find wonder. Instead, we found empires built on bones. We found species that measured their worth by their ability to make others suffer. His voice dropped. We adapted, we learned, we prepared. We hoped that preparation would never be needed. We were wrong. He looked at Kethalor. The Dominion has a choice now. You can retreat from the outer rim. You can leave humanity alone. You can accept that there is one species in this galaxy that you cannot conquer. Or, he paused, or you can continue down this path. You can gather your fleets and come for us. And you will learn, in fire and blood and death, what happens when you mistake our silence for weakness. He began to walk toward the exit. We are returning to watching now. We have shown you enough. The next move is yours. He reached the door and stopped. He turned back one last time. But know this, High Sovereign, know this, all of you. We are always listening. We are always watching. We have been among you for 60 years, and you never knew. His eyes found Kethalor's. Do not make us show you what else we have kept hidden, because you will not survive the lesson. He walked out of the chamber. The silence he left behind was absolute. In that silence, 1,000 thoughts raced through 1,000 minds. The galaxy had just changed. The balance of power had just shifted. A species they had dismissed as weak and primitive had just revealed itself to be something else entirely. And for the first time in 10,000 years, the Vethrani Dominion did not know what to do. Kethaler stood frozen. His compound eyes stared at the empty doorway. His mind tried to process what had just happened. The human had walked into a room full of the most powerful species in the galaxy. He had revealed that humanity had been spying on the Dominion for 30 years. He had threatened the greatest military power in existence, and then he had simply walked away, because he was not afraid, because he did not need to be afraid, because whatever humanity had built in the darkness between stars, it was enough. Kethaler's mandibles began to click again. But this time, the sound was different. This time, there was uncertainty in it, and in that uncertainty, the first seeds of fear began to grow. The quiet human had spoken, and the galaxy would never be the same again. The Dominion did not listen. Perhaps they could not listen. Perhaps 10,000 years of conquest had made them incapable of backing down. Perhaps Kethaler's pride would not allow him to be the first High Sovereign to retreat from a lesser species. Perhaps they simply did not believe. Whatever the reason, they chose war. In the months after the council meeting, the Vethrani Dominion gathered its strength. Ships were recalled from distant territories. Shipyards worked around the clock, building new vessels and repairing old ones. Warriors were trained and equipped with the finest weapons the Dominion could produce. Kethalor was not taking any chances. Not this time. The armada he assembled was the largest in galactic history. 12,000 warships from every corner of Vethrani space. Battleships the size of cities. Carriers loaded with tens of thousands of fighters. Destroyers and cruisers and support vessels stretching across millions of kilometers. It was a force that could conquer entire civilizations. A force that could darken the skies of 100 worlds. A force that no species in the history of the galaxy had ever defeated. And at the head of this armada, aboard his new flagship, the Eternal Sovereign, Kethaler led his people toward Earth. He had studied the humans' words. He had analyzed the battle at New Cascadia. He had consulted with his finest military minds, and he had concluded that the humans were bluffing. They had to be bluffing. Yes, they had destroyed the Third Expeditionary Fleet. Yes, they had shown technology beyond what the Dominion possessed. But one ship, no matter how advanced, could not stop 12,000. Numbers mattered. Mass mattered. The humans might have quality, but the Dominion had quantity beyond imagination. There was no way humanity had built a fleet large enough to match this armada. There was no way they could have hidden something that big. The galaxy was full of sensors and spies and eyes. Someone would have noticed. The humans were bluffing. They had to be. The journey to Sol, the human home system, took 3 weeks. 3 weeks of the largest fleet in history moving through hyperspace in perfect formation. 3 weeks of warriors preparing for the final battle. 3 weeks of Kethalor dreaming of the moment he would watch Earth burn. When they arrived at the edge of the Sol system, sensors showed them what they expected. A handful of human ships clustered around the third planet. Defense platforms in orbit. Nothing that could stop even a fraction of the Dominion fleet. Kethalor allowed himself a moment of satisfaction. They were bluffing, he said to his bridge crew. All that talk of hidden fleets and secret weapons. Look at them. They have nothing. His second-in-command, a young officer named Yethdal who had replaced the fallen Kethros, nodded eagerly. Shall we begin the attack, High Sovereign? Kethalor opened his mandibles in a Vethrani smile. No. First, we will give them one last chance to understand their mistake. Open a channel to their planet. The communication officers worked quickly. Moments later, a connection was established. Kethalor spoke with the full weight of 10,000 years of empire behind his words. Humans of Earth. This is High Sovereign Kethalor of the Vethrani Dominion. I come with 12,000 warships and the might of the greatest civilization in galactic history. He paused, letting the number sink in. You destroyed our expeditionary fleet. You humiliated our empire. You threatened us in our own council chamber. These crimes cannot go unanswered. He leaned forward, but I am not without mercy. Surrender now. Deactivate your defenses. Give us your leaders and your weapons technology. Do this, and your people will be allowed to live. As subjects of the Dominion, he waited. The communication channel remained open. Then a response came. It was a voice transmission only, no image. High Sovereign Kethalor. This is Commander Elias Vance of Earth's Strategic Defense Command. Kethalor's eyes widened. The human from the council meeting. The quiet one who had threatened them all. You were warned. Elias continued. His voice was calm, almost sad. You were given every opportunity to choose a different path. You chose this. There was a pause. What happens now is not revenge. It is not anger. It is simply consequence. The consequence of believing that silence means weakness. The consequence of refusing to learn. Another pause. May whatever gods you believe in have mercy on your souls, because we cannot. The channel closed. Kethalor felt a cold sensation in his body, a feeling he had not experienced in 200 years. Fear. He pushed it aside. It was just words. The humans were still trying to frighten him, still trying to make him back down. But he had 12,000 ships. No amount of threats could change that. All ships, he commanded. Begin the advance. Formation Alpha 7. Destroy anything that... He never finished the order. Space exploded. Not in one place. Everywhere. At 1,000 different points around the Dominion fleet. Reality tore itself open. Massive tears in the fabric of space appeared without warning, and through those tears came ships. Human ships. Not hundreds. Thousands. 4,000 vessels of impossible design erupted from folded space, surrounding the Dominion fleet in a sphere of black metal and burning light. They were shapes that made no sense, covered in angles that seemed to shift when you looked at them. They were nightmares, given form, and they were not alone. Behind the ships, appearing in the darkness between stars, came the weapons platforms. Millions of them, autonomous machines ranging in size from fighters to stations, each one bristling with weapons, each one controlled by artificial minds that thought faster than any organic creature. The Dominion fleet was trapped, encircled, locked in place by wormhole generators that made hyperspace jump impossible. There was no retreat. There was no escape. There was only death. Keth Aller stared at his sensor displays. His compound eyes could not process what they showed. This was not possible. Humanity had been in the galaxy for 60 years. They could not have built this fleet. They could not have hidden it. And yet, here it was. "All ships," he screamed into the communication system. "Open fire. Concentrate on the largest targets. We can still win this." The Vethrani fleet began to shoot. 12,000 ships fired everything they had at the human formation. The void between the fleets filled with weapons fire, a storm of energy and projectiles that could have destroyed planets. The human ships moved. They moved in ways that should not have been possible. They slid between attacks. They predicted fire before it was launched. They danced through the storm of destruction as if it were nothing more than a light rain. And then they struck back. The weapons humanity had developed were beyond anything the galaxy had ever seen. White beams that cut through Vethrani shields as if they were not there. Missiles that moved through folded space, appearing inside enemy ships. Gravity weapons that crushed vessels into compressed balls of metal and flesh. The first wave of Dominion ships died in seconds. 300 battleships, simply gone, erased from existence by weapons they could not understand. The second wave tried to maneuver, tried to find cover in the chaos. But there was no cover. The humans were everywhere. Their ships moved through the Dominion fleet like predators through a herd, striking, destroying, moving on. Aboard his flagship, Keith Aller watched his empire's might evaporate. 1,000 ships gone, then 2,000, then 5,000. The communication channels filled with screaming, with death cries, with final prayers to Vethrani gods, and through it all, a message played on repeat. Elias Vance's voice, calm and measured, as if he were reading a grocery list. "You were warned. You were given every opportunity to choose differently. This is not vengeance. This is consequence." Keth Aller threw himself at the communication console. "All ships, retreat. Everyone, fall back." But there was nowhere to fall back to. The wormhole generators had locked the system down. No ship could jump to hyperspace. No ship could escape. The autonomous platforms moved through the fleet now, small and fast and everywhere. They targeted engines and weapon systems, crippling ships before the main fleet moved in to finish them. They targeted escape pods and shuttles, making sure no warning could be sent to the Dominion homeworld. This was not a battle. This was an execution. Yethdal grabbed Keth Aller's arm. The young officer was shaking with terror. "High Sovereign, what do we do? What can we do?" Keth Aller looked at his second in command. He looked at the screens showing the death of his fleet. He looked at his own hands, shaking despite his efforts to control them. What could they do? Nothing. There was nothing to do. The humans had prepared for this moment for 60 years. They had built weapons the Dominion could not fight. They had developed technology the Dominion could not understand. They had let the galaxy believe they were weak, while they became the most dangerous species in existence, and the Dominion had walked straight into their trap. Keth Aller thought of all the species his people had conquered, all the worlds they had burned, all the civilizations they had ended because they had the power to do so. This was what it felt like to be on the other side. This was what it felt like to be helpless. A massive explosion rocked the flagship. Emergency alarms screamed. Officers shouted damage reports that no one listened to. "Hull breach on deck 7 through 15. Engine room 2 is not responding. Shields are failing." Keth Aller ignored them all. He walked slowly to the main view screen and watched. Outside, in the darkness of space, his fleet was dying. The pride of the Vethrani Dominion, 12,000 warships, was being torn apart by an enemy they had dismissed as primitives. Ships exploded in silence. Debris scattered in all directions. Bodies floated in the void. And the human fleet continued its work, methodical and unstoppable. After 6 hours, it was over. Less than 200 Vethrani ships remained. Crippled, damaged, barely functioning. The humans had stopped shooting. They had left these ships alive, but not by accident. A message came through the communication system. Elias Vance's voice. "High Sovereign Keth Aller, we know you survived. We let you survive." Keth Aller looked at the speaker. He did not respond. "You will return to your home world. You will tell your people what happened here. You will tell them that humanity is not to be touched. Not now. Not ever." A pause. "The 200 ships we have spared are the mercy we can offer. Take them. Go home. Tell the galaxy what you have seen. Another pause. And pray that we never have reason to come to you. The channel closed. Keth Ayler stood in the ruined bridge of his flagship. Around him, the surviving crew were silent, shocked, broken. He had come here with 12,000 ships, the largest armada in galactic history. He had come to destroy humanity and burn their world to ash. He was leaving with less than 200, crippled, humiliated, defeated. The High Sovereign of the Vethrani Dominion, ruler of 1,000 worlds, conqueror of dozens of species, fell to his knees, and for the first time in his 200 years of life, he wept. In the Sol system, the human fleet began to stand down. Ships powered down their weapons. Platforms returned to their hidden positions. The tiers in space closed, one by one, returning the system to peaceful darkness. On Earth, in the command center of the Strategic Defense Division, Elias Vance removed his headset and set it on the console. His hands were steady, but his eyes were tired. A young officer approached him. "Commander, we have won." Elias looked at her. "Won? No, we have not won. We have survived. That is not the same thing." He looked at the main screen, showing the debris field where 12,000 ships had died. Hundreds of thousands of Vethrani warriors, gone in 6 hours. "We have just killed more beings in one day than humanity has killed in all of its history combined. We have shown the galaxy that we are the most dangerous species in existence. We have proven that everything they feared about us is true." He shook his head slowly. "This is not victory. This is tragedy. A tragedy that began thousands of years ago when the Dominion chose to build an empire on conquest. A tragedy that continued when they refused to believe that we were dangerous. A tragedy that ended here, today, with the deaths of hundreds of thousands who did not need to die." He turned away from the screen. "We did what we had to do. We protected our people. We protected our future. But do not call this a victory. Call it what it is." He paused at the door. "Call it a lesson written in fire and blood, and pray that the galaxy learns from it. Because if they do not..." He left the sentence unfinished. He did not need to finish it. Everyone in the room understood. If the galaxy did not learn, if more species came to test humanity, if more threats arose, then more fleets would bleed, more stars would burn, more lessons would be taught, and in the end, nothing would remain but silence. The quiet humans, the ones everyone had ignored, the ones everyone had dismissed, they had stopped being quiet, and the galaxy would never forget. 1 month after the Battle of Sol, the Galactic Council met again. The chamber was quieter than anyone could remember. Species that had once talked over each other now sat in nervous silence. Delegations that had laughed and joked before meetings now whispered in corners with worried expressions. The air itself seemed heavy with fear. The Vethrani delegation sat in the far corner of the room. Their section, once the most prominent and central, had been moved to the edge. This was not an official decision. It was simply that no one wanted to sit near them anymore. Keth Ayler was not there. The High Sovereign had returned to the Dominion homeworld a broken being. He had delivered the news of the defeat himself, and the shock had nearly destroyed his government. There had been riots in the streets of the capital. Military officers had killed themselves in shame. The entire empire had shaken like a building in an earthquake. In Keth Ayler's place sat a new representative, a diplomat named Vethsara, who had been chosen because she was known for favoring peaceful solutions. The Dominion had learned its lesson. At least for now. Vethsara's crystal plates were dull with grief. Half of her family had died at the Battle of Sol. Her brother had been a commander on one of the destroyed battleships. She had watched the recordings of the fight, seen his ship torn apart by weapons that looked like magic. She did not hate the humans. She was too tired for hate. She simply sat and waited and tried to understand how everything had gone so wrong. When Elias Vance entered the chamber, every head turned. He walked alone, as he always did. His gray uniform was the same as always. His expression was calm, his movements unhurried. He looked exactly as he had looked months ago, when he sat in the corner being ignored. But nothing was the same now. Nothing would ever be the same. He walked to the center of the chamber and stood before the full council. The arbitrator floated beside him, but even the ancient energy being seemed to defer to the human today. "Commander Vance," the arbitrator said, The Council has asked you to address us regarding the events of the past months and the future relationship between humanity and the galactic community. You may speak." Elias nodded. He looked around the room, meeting the eyes of representatives from 100 different species. He saw fear in those eyes. Respect, hatred, wonder, confusion. He understood all of these feelings. He felt many of them himself. "Thank you, arbitrator," he said. His voice was quiet but clear. "I will try to be brief. I know that many of you have questions, and I will do my best to answer them." He took a breath. "First, I want to say something that needs to be said. Humanity did not want this." He paused to let the words sink in. "We did not come to the stars to make war. We did not build our hidden fleet because we dreamed of conquest. We did not prepare for 60 years because we wanted to prove ourselves superior." He looked at the Vethrani delegation. Vethsara met his eyes without flinching. "We came to the stars hoping to find wisdom. We hoped to meet species who had existed for thousands of years and learn from their experience. We hoped to find friends, partners, teachers." His voice became harder. "Instead, we found empires built on bones. We found species that measured their worth by how many others they could crush. We found a galaxy where the strong took what they wanted and the weak had two choices: submit or die." He shook his head slowly. "We chose a third option. We chose to become strong enough that no one would ever be able to threaten us, strong enough that we could never be conquered, never be enslaved, never watch our children taken as tribute to some empire that saw them as nothing more than resources." He spread his hands. "Everything we built in defense. Every ship, every weapon, every secret facility between the stars. All of it was preparation for a day we hoped would never come. All of it was designed to protect our people, our worlds, our future." He looked at Kethalor's empty seat. "But the Dominion forced our hand. They sent 400 ships to conquer one of our colonies. They dismissed our warnings. They gathered 12,000 warships and came to destroy our homeworld." His voice dropped. "We did not choose this fight. But when it came to us, we finished it." He was silent for a moment. The chamber was silent with him. "I know that many of you are afraid now. I know that you look at humanity and see a threat. You wonder if we will do to others what we did to the Dominion fleet. You wonder if we have secretly planned to conquer the galaxy all along." He shook his head. "Let me be absolutely clear. Humanity has no interest in empire. We do not want to rule other species. We do not want to take your worlds or your resources or your people. We built our strength so that we could live in peace, not so that we could make war." He turned slowly, addressing the entire council. "But let me also be clear about this. We will not tolerate threats. We will not allow anyone to endanger our people. We sat quietly for 60 years because we wanted peace. If that peace is threatened, we will not sit quietly again." He pulled out a small data device and held it up. "This contains the terms humanity is proposing for moving forward. They are simple, and they are fair." He activated the device, and a holographic list appeared above it. First, the Outer Rim territories will remain neutral space. No empire will claim them. No species will be forced to join any government. The colonies there, human and otherwise, will be free. Several delegations nodded. This was more than fair. Second, the Dominion will release all enslaved populations within its territory. The species of the Hollow Worlds, the survivors of conquered civilizations, all of them will be given their freedom. This process will be overseen by a council committee to ensure it is completed properly. Vethsara closed her eyes. This would be difficult for her people to accept, but after what had happened, they had no choice. Third, the Dominion's military will be restructured under council oversight. Not eliminated, but reorganized to prevent future aggression. Defensive forces will be permitted. Offensive fleets will be reduced. Murmurs ran through the chamber. This was a dramatic change. The Dominion had never accepted outside control of its military. Fourth and finally, humanity will share some of our medical and civilian technology with the Council. Advances in healing, in food production, in energy generation, technology that can help species across the galaxy live better lives. He deactivated the device. We are not sharing our military technology. That will remain ours alone. But we are willing to contribute to the advancement of all species in ways that do not threaten our security. He posed. These are our terms. They are not negotiable. The Dominion can accept them, or they can face the consequences of refusal. But I believe, I hope, that they will accept. He looked at Vethsara. I know that you have lost much, Representative. Your people have lost much. I will not pretend that the deaths at the Battle of Saul were not a tragedy. Hundreds of thousands of beings died because their leaders made choices that left us no alternative. His voice softened slightly. Humanity does not hate the Vethrani. We do not want to punish your species. We want to move forward. We want to build something better than what came before. He looked at the full council. That is the choice before all of us. We can learn from what happened. We can create a galaxy where strength does not mean cruelty, where power does not mean domination, where species can exist together without conquering each other. He shook his head. Or we can continue as before. We can pretend that nothing has changed. We can wait for the next empire to rise and the next war to come, and the next lessons to be written in blood. He moved toward the exit, then stopped. Humanity will be watching. We have always been watching, but now we will be watching openly, as equals, not as the child species in the corner that no one cared about. He turned back one final time. Remember what you have seen. Remember what happens when you mistake silence for weakness. Remember that the species who makes no noise is not the species with nothing to say. He took a breath. We were quiet because we were listening. We were learning. We were preparing. And when the time came, we were ready. His eyes found Vethsara's once more. Do not make us teach this lesson again, because the galaxy cannot afford it. And honestly, neither can we. He walked out of the chamber. Behind him, silence remained, but it was a different kind of silence now. Not the silence of dismissal, not the silence of contempt. It was the silence of species who were finally beginning to understand. In the weeks that followed, the council voted on humanity's terms. The vote was not close. Every proposal passed, with overwhelming support. Even the Dominion voted in favor, though their representatives' hands shook as she cast the vote. The hollow worlds were freed. Billions of beings who had been born as slaves walked out of their chains and saw the sky as free people for the first time. Some of them wept. Some of them laughed. Some of them simply stood in silence, not quite believing it was real. The Dominion military was restructured. Officers who had built their careers on conquest found themselves reassigned or retired. New leaders, ones who understood that the old ways were over, took their places. And across the galaxy, species began to change how they thought about power. Not quickly. Change never comes quickly to beings who have believed the same things for thousands of years. But slowly, in small ways, the culture of the galaxy began to shift. Empires stopped making threats so easily. Species that had been planning conquests quietly abandoned those plans. The strong still had more power than the weak, but they were more careful about how they used it, because somewhere in the darkness between stars, humanity was watching. Elias Vance retired from public service 6 months after the council meeting. He was given a small house on a quiet island on Earth, far from cities and governments and the machinery of power. He spent his days reading books and walking on the beach and watching the waves roll in. Sometimes he thought about the Vethrani who had died at the Battle of Saul. He knew their names. He had requested the list from intelligence services. Over 300,000 names. He had read every one. He did not regret what he had done. He could not regret it. Those beings had come to destroy his world, to kill his people, to enslave or murder everyone he had ever known. He had stopped them. That was necessary. But he remembered them. He would always remember them. That was necessary too. One evening, a young officer came to his house. She was new to the service, barely 20 years old, and she had been assigned to deliver a routine report. But she lingered after handing over the papers. Commander Vance? I mean, sir, I know you're retired, but... He smiled at her. Just Elias now. What is it? She struggled for words. I just wanted to say, I joined the service because of what you did, because of what you said. That thing about silence not meaning weakness, about watching and learning and waiting. She took a breath. My grandmother was on New Cascadia. She was one of the 2 million people the Dominion wanted to conquer. Because of you, because of what you built, she's alive. I'm alive. Tears formed in her eyes. Thank you. I know you probably hear that a lot, but thank you. Elias looked at this young woman, this representative of the future he had fought to protect. He thought about all the people like her. Billions of humans living their lives in peace because his generation had made the hard choices. "You're welcome," he said quietly. "But I hope you understand something. What we did because we had no choice. We built weapons of war because peace required it. We became dangerous because it was the only way to be safe." He looked out at the ocean. "But that's not what humanity should be. That's not what we want to be. We want to be explorers, learners, builders of things that help, not things that destroy." He looked back at her. "Your generation, and the ones after you. I hope you never have to do what we did. I hope the galaxy has learned its lesson. I hope you can use all that strength we built for something better than war." He smiled. "That's what I want to be thanked for. Not the battles we won, but the peace that comes after. The future we protected." The young officer nodded. She understood. She saluted, turned, and walked away into the evening light. Elias watched her go. Then he turned back to the ocean and listened to the sound of the waves. Somewhere out there, among the stars, the ships of humanity's hidden fleet still waited, watching, listening, ready to defend their species if the need ever arose again. But for now, there was peace. For now, the lesson had been learned, and in the quiet spaces between worlds, where humanity had built its thunder, there was only silence. The good kind of silence, the kind that meant no one was being threatened, the kind that meant no one needed to fight, the kind that meant the galaxy, at last, was learning to live together. It would not last forever. Nothing lasts forever. But it was a start, and for a species that had once been ignored, dismissed, and laughed at, it was enough. Humanity had shown the galaxy what it was capable of. Now it would show them something better. In the archives of the Galactic Council, a new entry was added. Entry 7412. The Lesson of Soul. The final paragraph read, "In the silence between heartbeats, between stars, between words left unspoken, that is where humanity built its thunder. Let all species remember, the quiet ones are not the weak ones. They are simply waiting for their moment to speak. And when they speak, the galaxy listens." The archive was sealed, and the stars continued to burn, keeping their secrets, as they always had, as they always would.